need. And we can do this. Phoenix has a 10% reunification rate every year. And Boston has an 8% rate and has reached functional zero for unsheltered homelessness. For folks with more complex needs and barriers, such as outstanding misdemeanors and warrants, we are setting up a system to clear those within hours instead of weeks. I've met with the presiding judges and they're excited to be part of this solution. This month, we helped reunify people with loved ones to Bismarck, North Dakota, Fargo, North Dakota, Houston, Texas, Johnson, Tennessee, Martinez, California, Newark, New Jersey, Newton, Kansas, Orlando, Florida, Portland, Maine, Ukiah, California. And I promise you that list just goes on. And when you see it, it represents the 50 states that we're helping people get back to their loved ones. Next slide. Goal number 3, we're setting up our emergency shelter system. It's been my goal since the beginning to make the $15 million that you contributed to this effort the most cost-effective money this council has ever spent. Now we're in the action phase and you're seeing big moves. We've opened 810 shelter beds in 9 months. We've opened many types to meet the needs of those on our streets, all gender shelters, low barrier shelters, women-only shelters, recovery-oriented shelters, and now family shelters. We have additional sites that we're in the final stages of preparing, and we will announce this week, bringing the total to 1,090. More are on the way in the coming weeks, and we're getting very close to our goal of 1,500. Next slide. And we're getting our first look at the data, and it's clear shelters are good for Portland's neighborhood. Crime goes down and livability and business levels go up. Well-managed shelters can bring tangible improvements, and that's what we're here to do. Over the coming months, I believe every added bed and day center will have an exponential positive impact on the livability across the city. Every neighborhood needs a solution that doesn't rely on pushing people over to the next neighborhood. Every person deserves a place to go, a place to belong, and a place to sleep safely. Next slide. Together, that means a safe bed for every person every night, if we can move people through the system. This brings us to goal number 4. In 2017, as this slide illustrates, our emergency shelter system had only a few people that stayed over a year. Today, we have hundreds. Applying continuous improvement techniques, we must shift our system and approach to a rapid exit mindset. Rapid exit mindset has zero cost to implement, with potential for significantly improving outcomes. Mayor Bowser told us in Washington, D.C., who has 700 people living unsheltered in a city the similar size as the city of Portland. In Portland, we have 7,000 people living unsheltered. Here's the new guidelines we put in place for the city's 24-hour shelters, and we are asking the county to do the same. Our shelters now require participant engagement. We do nightly bed utilization checks. We have stay limit goals. The city recently made these changes, and the number of participants seeking services like housing, medical, treatment, and employment significantly increased. I got the report a week ago from Clinton Triangle, and it just noted that, look at the wins that we have this week. 6 MST assessments. I don't even know what that is.
That's been good. Yes, no.
Yeah.
Getting into the coordinated access system.
33 subsidized housing apps. So these are individuals rushing to get in line, to get moving, to move out of a pod or a shelter bed. A guest approved for Starlight Apartment. A guest moved into the MLK Manor. Regarding employment, we have 3 guests gained employment, 2 guests completed flagging certifications, treatment, 2 guests completed detox, 3 guests started outpatient treatment, 4 guests started MAT services, 8 guests went to connect with CCC, medical, enrollments in OHP, 8 guests accessed peer support specialists, documents, 6 guests obtained ID, 8 guests obtained birth certificates. Just because we explained to them we have a 120-day goal, We need to help you through the system, but this is an emergency shelter. You can't stay here. We want to help. What does it look like? That's when you engage self-actualization. And that's what it looks like when you're moving somebody up and down the continuum. These steps have zero cost to implement, but improve outcomes dramatically. How do you double the effectiveness of a single bed? You move somebody through it twice as fast. Next slide. Bottlenecks have consequences. Every person stuck in the shelter system denies a bed to the next person who needs it. In 2017, as this slide illustrates, the average length of stay in our emergency shelter system was 23 days. 7 years later, the average is 77 days. We've also gone from spending $40 million annually to $400 million. If you're worried that my plan at the city warehouses people instead of moving them through the system, look at these numbers. We have already been doing that and using continuous improvement, which means we can't keep doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different outcome, can help us unstick this system. There are 41 days left until December 1st. I know because in every meeting we have, Skylar and her team must present how many days we have to accomplish this goal that we've promised to the city. We know this because we have to have these beds operational to ensure no person suffers and dies on our streets this winter. It's a promise we've made to you. It's a promise we've made to our community, and we must fulfill that promise. We must act together and be relentless in this pursuit. And most importantly, with ample shelter beds now available, we must never, ever exit somebody to the street again. Next slide. Goal number 5, we reestablish community standards on safety, health, and sanitation in our city. When we choose not to enforce existing policies, we create new policies. Many of these unwritten policies of non-enforcement are unfair to those who play by the rules, contribute to the community, and respect their neighbors. Worse, it means we expose people to harm by leaving them in terrible conditions. We need to reestablish community standards on public safety and sanitation. For example, we can't afford to continue to remove 10 million pounds of trash every year. The Statue of Liberty weighs 440,000 pounds. We are disposing of that equivalent every 2 weeks from the encampment cleanups that we're doing. We all know the terrible toll this causes to the neighborhoods and businesses as well. That's why we're increasing encampment outreach and enforcing existing laws and rules now that we have shelter capacity to always have a better option than the street. Additionally, Portland has become a place where people bring uninhabitable RVs and try to live in them despite there being no RV hookups anywhere in our city. You have to go to Tiger to dump any tanks, and we know people aren't doing that. Our RV task force previously towed 38 unsafe RVs per month, and we're funded to boost that goal to 96. Councilor Simpson, in our East Portland area where RVs are most prolific, we really are having a significant gain in helping those individuals into shelter. And that is one of the reasons we've not just opened low barrier shelters, but family shelters, because we want to have the right resource at the right time for anybody that we're helping off the street and into care. Finally, we must adopt a person down mentality. A few days ago, a Portlander was found on the sidewalk with hundreds of people walking by, and they were dead. It's not moral or normal to walk past someone who is in such distress when they're down on the ground. When we see it, we must rush resources, ask them what they need, but also let them know that this is not acceptable in our city. We're a caring city. We've got care and resources for you. When we see it, we must act. And that is exactly what our public safety system is being requested to do. Our new See, Care, Connect initiative will be rolled out soon, which will guide our public safety system and all Portlanders on what to do when they see someone who is laying or incapacitated on our streets. We are no longer leaving people to suffer and die on the streets of Portland. Next slide. And finally, goal number 6. Homelessness is a housing problem, full stop. Everything prior to that is triage. That's why we've set up the Shelter to Housing Strike Team, and I'm happy to say Liam Frost joins us from Metro to represent. This new incident command center meets weekly, and every governmental body in the area has a seat at the table. If we don't act immediately, we'll only build around 800 new homes this year, the same as last year. But we're not waiting. Recently, the Portland City Council voted unanimously to support the 5,000 new homes challenge by waiving system development charges for all builders for the next 36 months. It is time for developers and builders to do what they do best, and that's to build and help our community add the housing stock that we need to provide care for everybody. Another new initiative we are pursuing is the Portland Housing Access Initiative, or Home Share, which can potentially provide deeply affordable rooms for as low as $175 a week. We want to flood the market with inventory to keep opportunities high and lower prices. A single startup in Atlanta has opened up 8,000 units of home share in the city without building a single structure. We don't have a housing crisis. We have a housing vacancy activation crisis. There are 200,000 empty bedrooms in the city of Portland right now that we could be utilizing. That's what Portland is using, and we're going to activate and help people with that inventory to provide care for our community. We learned how they can coordinate payment according to when paychecks arrive, set up trusted tenant-friendly relationships. They remove other barriers such as first and last month rent and security deposit. When we can unlock existing inventory and make it available rapidly, a healthy city with widely accessible, deeply affordable, and affordable housing is a caring city. That concludes my report out to the city council, to this Metro Council. I want to just appreciate your support. These accomplishments are in large part because of this council, and I'm very proud to stand or sit before you today and provide this report. We are going to achieve something that I haven't seen achieved in the nation before, and I want to compliment Portland Solutions. It's a team that has really been carrying this water, but truly, without your support early to help fund this, we wouldn't be at this precipice of really turning the tide and moving the city forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of what you had laid out to me when you first presented this is filling in those gaps, getting face-to-face communication with folks so that you can find what they need and get them into the system as soon as possible so that we can help them along. And I really appreciate the hard work you've put into this. So council questions? Councilor Nolan and then Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not so much a question, but I am delighted with this report. I think it's a fabulous template and also challenge to the rest of the region to perform similarly. And I particularly want to zero in on your establishment in most of your goals, maybe all 6 of them, of an end condition that you are aiming to achieve. Not a throughput, but what result do we want our neighbors, our guests, our fellow Portlanders to experience as a result of the work we do? It will take some changing among our other programs to get to that point. But I applaud you for keeping in mind the effect and the accomplishment that with our support, individuals can achieve through these programs. The blend of firmness, but also caring. And an expectation that all the participants on the staff side of your initiatives and programs can use as their guiding light is brilliant. And I want to see us encourage our other partners to have that kind of focus. Thank you. It's really brilliant guiding light for us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to fashion a question out of that. Councilor Nolan, just while you were talking about that, I realized it's not for us and the electeds. It's culturally setting out a challenge to 650,000 Portlanders that you can be certain that there's an empty bed tonight. So if you're willing to jump in and care for that neighbor on the corner or somebody at your doorstep, you can be sure there's a life-saving support just a phone call away. And so nobody will be left without a resource. It's interesting. I liked your framing on that.
Wow. You made me sound more brilliant. Thank you to me, but I'll take that and I'll follow your lead.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Councilor Simpson.
Thank you, President Peterson, and thank you, Mayor Wilson, for that presentation and your steadfastness around how we address this for our neighbors and our community members. I do have a question. You said you're gonna have about 1,100 shelter beds open by this week. What's the occupancy rate on those rooms at night when they're open for folks?
You mean the vacancy?
The vacancy rate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Skylar Brucker, now Director of Portland Solutions, so the team that's tasked with implementing kind of a lot of this work. Thanks, Councilor, for the question. Every shelter is a little different, but we do track the nightly bed occupancy. So some are between, I would say 50 to 60 is probably the average right now. Some are above 70, but it just percent, sorry. So it just depends on the specific shelter. We have seen an uptick, obviously, when weather changes. So rain, cold weather, we really are trying to make sure we have the beds available for when folks want to come inside.
So we're looking at about 500 folks sheltered out of this 1,100
Yes.
shelter beds. Okay, I guess I have a larger question, right? Because the weather's turning, obviously. Nighttime, crucial. But what about during the daytime? How do we incentivize folks to come in during the day when, inclement weather does happen during the daytimes as well?
Yes, a great question. So one of the pieces that the $15 million funded were 2 day centers, basically. So I'll just quickly give you kind of an overview. Right now, we have the Oasis Day Center site. So it's kind of a more cost-effective version of a brick and mortar day space. So it's outside, Block R is what we call it at the city, but it's a city block that Prosper Portland owns in Old Town. And we activated the space, put in heaters and rain cover and to have coffee every morning and access to showers and laundry services. And for example, one day last week, we saw over 600 people making use of that specific site. So clearly there's a need there. The other day space that we currently have activated is an expansion of the Join Day Center. So this is a historic day space that a lot of people have used over the years. We expanded not only the amount of days they're open, so 7 days a week now, which weekend access is really crucial and necessary. We also expanded the hours they're open every day, and we also worked with them to expand the capacity every day that they can serve. So that location sits on 82nd. It's right at the crux of 3 different city districts. So we really found that it's serving quite a few folks in the community and strategically located. And then we're looking into 2 additional sites right now, expansion being one of the cheaper ways to really expand existing services than develop an entire new day center site.
Thank you for that. And that's what we're doing on our side. How do
Mm-hmm.
we incentivize folks to actually engage with it? What is the mechanism there? And then to tag along to that, what's the long-term stability plan to making sure once folks are there, they are hitchhiked on to a more stable place?
Yeah.
Because at 50% occupancy, right, 1,500, even if you make it to 1,500, that's only about 750 folks covered, meaning 750 beds are still empty.
Yeah. And I will say, so like, for example, last year during severe weather, there were over 1,300 people served. So I think depending on what the temperature is, frankly, I think there will be a higher occupancy. And we want to make sure we're ready for that when it hits. And so we're not only serving those folks on the coldest nights of the year, but we have that capacity for the entire winter. But part of what I really appreciate about what Councilor Nolan said about the mayor is his clarity of vision is really helpful. So from a leadership standpoint, knowing, okay, this is what we need to look at every single day. He's very focused on metrics. So my team looks at those percentages every single night. And we're going to evaluate that throughout the course of the winter. I think that'll help us toggle the system on and off and really know when we need to surge and when we can actually reduce the capacity and the number of beds. So we're looking at it as really a dynamic system.
And the incentivization, when does that part?
Yes. So Part of this, so sorry. Please jump in if you want. I could talk about this all day. But what we're working on right now is my outreach teams in the morning when folks are let out of shelter. Those service providers that are on site serving folks overnight and the outreach teams are really incentivizing folks to go to those day spaces. When they're at the day space, a cup of coffee goes a long way to really encourage folks to get to different services. We're making sure folks have food, that they have access to showers, to that laundry service. Those are things that really help people connect in the moment. And then we bring on mental health and behavioral health services. So for example, at the Oasis site, we strategically located it where the peer company has their behavioral health resource center van. So people come every day, they're used to that site. They can get access to the behavioral health resource center. We have the Multnomah County Health van that comes every week. We have the Central City Concern Health van that comes every week. We've done resource fairs. So we bring in different providers and different outreach teams to really connect folks on site to those services. They have somewhere to hang out. They have somewhere to get a cup of coffee, some food, access those different services, but also connect to those different resources. I think making it as available as possible and all in one area has really helped incentivize folks to that next step. So we can provide those missed assessments to get folks on coordinated access lists. We can make sure that folks are taking all the steps they need through Oregon Health Plan and getting on Social Security or benefits to make sure they're taking all the steps they need to get into the next part of the system.
May I just add a little bit? So let me flip that on the inflow side of it. So hospital dumping is something that occurs. So we had notice of that. And so we sent a cease and desist to that hospital network. And then I met with them and explained to them, if it occurs again, you'll be sued. They don't want to be a part of that. This is something that's been happening in Portland because we've had a permissive approach. We're no longer permitting the nation as a whole to use Portland as the solution to our nation's homelessness. If you send somebody to Portland and they don't have a loved one, you will be held accountable. Our community standards are very clear. When we are helping somebody through an encampment, we want to bring you inside. But if you have a warrant, you're going to be arrested. Our police haven't been engaging for years. I went out with our officers the other day. Chief was with me, 6 of us. And I wanted to see how the encampment was being remediated. And while the person was gaining their goods, they brought up a truck to load it. And I said, officer, please check that truck. Is it registered? Is it licensed? Is it insured? Is it operable? If not, then we have to take the vehicle. It's illegal. And he said, no, it's registered. And I said, well, run the plate. It was a stolen vehicle. So the person with 6 officers around and the chief had operated with impunity because it never happened before. That's what we allowed our streets to become, is a lawless environment where we're not maintaining just basic community standards, where a guy who's a stolen vehicle can come up and just move. So you see, it's not a negative. We're helping those individuals into the system, wherever that system may be. And it's just bringing a commonality and an understanding where all of us are a part of this community together. And it's time for us to really move forward together. So inflow is as much as connection to services as there is, and making sure that we're addressing the inflow and limiting as much as possible.
Thank you. I have more, but I'm gonna reserve.
You can always call.
I got a lot more.
No worries.
Call you.
We got a panel of hands here. So Councilor Lewis, Huang, and Rosenthal.
Sure, thank you. First, I want to thank you, Mayor, for coming and sitting with us. I would highly recommend that your peers at the county find time in their busy lives to sit as policymakers face to face with us. It goes a long way.
Yeah.
I'd like to commend you for having a vision and sticking with it. I think for the longest time, our system has been unable to build itself out and develop because we're making pivots and adjustments before we actually see the ball down the field. So where I would have thrown the ball probably 1 or 2 degrees off from where you're throwing it, you threw it and we're running after it. So that's good. A couple of things based on this presentation, and I thank Councilor Simpson for getting into where do we want to be in terms of building out a number of beds? We always want to have some vacancy. We always want to have some available. It just doesn't feel efficient or strategic to be building up where there's so much more capacity than we're using, while still pushing to open more without making what we have what we need it to be. And I'm thinking in particular around families. not a mention of what we're doing with folks who have loved ones that they need to stay with. And that gets tricky in all sorts of ways. And I want to push you on that. I want to hear what your next step is going to be for families. I also want to draw out that on one of your slides, it said rapid exit mindset. And I understand why that's there. Because there are people who say you're just warehousing. Rapid exit is your counterpoint to warehousing. However, I look at it as a true inefficiency. Unless your rapid exit is to either your reunification thing or to a successful placement in housing, that is a failure, not a success. Our systems spend so much time and energy with service providers driving around looking for people. They know their names. They know who they're looking for. They know where that person generally hangs out. They know where they would want to be, where they might be, and where their last case scenario is. But if we're moving people and pushing people to rapidly exit, we're not pushing people to rapidly house. And that's the successful process in my mind, is from shelter to what's next. It's either transitional or permanent housing. And then, okay, so I've asked you to respond to two things. Families and then this rapid exit mindset. Finally, I guess I understand where your reunification is coming from. It is a tool that has been used for more than a decade in this region fairly successfully. But the point at which we are serving the most chronically homeless people, it is not only that they have run out of money, they've run out of relationships. You cannot expect reunification with these folks who have burnt every relationship. Like, you've done 125, you want to do 700. Low-hanging fruit done. The gulf between low-hanging fruit and the hardest to serve, it's just not there. So I'm problematizing this only because I think it underscores what I'm going to call the magnet myth. The idea that the bulk of these people aren't from here. The bulk of these people are from here. They are not going home to Topeka, Kansas. They're going home to Westland. They are going home to downtown Portland.
Yeah. So two questions, family, and then the reunification and questions assigned. Let me tackle the second one first. So the numbers based on the point in time that we've broken down is 26% of those that are homeless in our community are from out of state. And so that's through the point in time. It's called previously housed location. So to your point, and I think that that's probably, I would assume it's an undercount because as you're interviewing, does somebody answer that? Whether they do or not, but that's at 26%. So let's just go with that number. 26% at 12,000, you can see how much that could be, 4,000 souls. So I believe our approach on reunification is the tip of the spear. And every time I set a goal for my community, and I set the goal for Sky at 14 and we blew right past it, and 14 per week, that's 750 to 800. Now our new goal is 24. And that's 1,000 to 1,200 souls. And so I don't think that I don't think we've reached it yet. I think that it is barely being reached. And then when I look at Boston, their success is 8% of their community. Phoenix is at 10% of their community. I set 10% for our goal because those are best practices. Reunification is a National Alliance to End Homeless best practice through their 5-point shelter guidelines. So that, Councilor, I want to test it and see. In other words, it doesn't matter if I'm wrong or if I'm right. If we're having success, just keep going because it's successful and we're helping people. And so I try and not overly talk about the numbers as just, are we succeeding or not? And we are. And then the other part was family. And so I can talk about the family as well. In Houston, they have a 64% rapid exit mindset success of not even having people walk through the shelter door. Because they're fun. Where were you last? Was it 1 month's rent? Did you need a couple $100? Were you on a couch? What can we do to repair? Is it reunification? It's this rapid exit mindset. First of all, we don't even want you in that shelter door. It's recognizing nothing good comes from a emergency shelter. Let's get somebody housed first. That should always be our first focus, never shelter. But in so doing, you hit it on the head, families, we never expected to do family shelters. It only just came forward 4 weeks ago because we saw the need and we thought, oh my God, there's so many families. So Sky and I recognized the need. She and her team went to work and we have 180 shelter beds now for family. And we're looking at quite an ecosystem of supporting those families. And we're looking at day services as well. You hit it on the head. We don't know what the challenges are, but if we're faced with it, if it's an obstacle, we're going to fill it. Now, what's next? And that's kind of where in that building the next, and we're with the county saying, hey, that's traditionally yours. Can you help us? What's next? Until we're creating that relationship. So, yeah.
I'll just also add, I think, to the rapid exit mindset piece, I think super important, Counselor, to kind of tease that out. So the mayor talked about, you know, a sliver of folks who reunification is going to work for. That's not going to be everybody that we're encountering. We know that. So what do we do for everybody else? And I think one piece that was really interesting for me to see in real time were shelters that I helped set up that are 24/7 shelters. We tried to set up sites that people really asked for, those kind of tiny home shelters. We really had folks who were staying there longer term, that were not making those next steps that they needed to get into housing, to get IDs, to get connected to different resources. And so the mayor put forward initially, you know, okay, what about a 90-day limit, stay limit? What if we just cap this at 90 days, really encourage people to engage, really encourage people to get to their next step and make that rapid movement? I talked to our service providers, we talked to different team members, our shelter operations team, and they said, I think we're going to need 120 days. And then we also talked about being trauma informed. Certain individuals, it's going to take longer than that. And their care coordinator, their case manager, they know that. And so we also built that into the model. And I think to the mayor's point, what we're, you know, to your analogy, I think we've thrown the ball. We know kind of what the goal is, but we're really trying to bob and weave to see, okay, how do we actually get there effectively? And that was one example where I was really shocked, frankly, how many people were engaging after we kind of set that expectation. We said, hey, we're going to give you a couple months to understand that this is coming. We're going to educate. We're going to do outreach with your case manager, and we're going to say, hey, how do we help you connect to that next step? It's really scary. A lot of folks that we're working with have been on the street a long time. And so really changing that behavior and really trying to pivot. I've seen a positive change, as the mayor mentioned, just like one shelter in 1 week, kind of all of those different pieces that we're trying to connect people to. I think that continuous improvement mindset that the mayor brings, for me, has been really educational to see how that affects the system in real time. Because you can see week to week, oh, this many people are getting engaged. That's different from 2 months ago at that same shelter site. And so I think we're just trying to always do a little bit better. We're trying to change things with money when we have it, but also things that don't need to be heavily resourced. So how do we change the behavior? How do we change how service providers are engaging with different people and really change that culture? And I think that's been something that I've been really encouraged by.
I want to add something to that. So for the last 6 months, continuous improvement and becoming a learning organization is very important. I have had numerous conversations with my county counterparts, and I've been trying to explain to them, this is working here. Let's pivot your system. They have such a wonderful high cost system that we really should be creating a high velocity system of care. I'm really struggling with having them understand how that continuous improvement works, how it looks. And I'm still gonna, I'm a dog with a bone. I'm not a quitter. And I keep talking to them every week about, let's look at your system. Let's start changing and toggle that switch to improve outcomes for everybody. And you'll be impressed. So that's why those numbers were up there. 23 days, 7 years ago, 77 days. And we have people living in shelters now, over years in shelters. So we cannot have people housed in emergency shelter. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wong, and then Councilor Rosenthal.
Great, thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mayor and Skylar, for all your work. I really appreciate your sense of collaboration, as well as your singular vision. I think that's been really effective. I think I was very heartened that you consider homelessness a housing problem in Strategy 6. And it really struck me when, did you say there was 200,000 empty?
200,000 empty bedrooms in the city of Portland.
That's amazing. So I'm wondering if you could speak about why that is and what barriers there are to getting them leased up. And also, if it is affordability, what role do you see kind of Metro play in the housing production conversation? Like, what could we be doing to help kind of, meet that 5,000 homes challenge in the city and actually across the region as well?
Yeah, well, first of all, compliment Metro on the housing bond, which was a clear success. So adding sticks and bricks is obviously a critical thing. And I want to know, well, what's next? And I know we're talking about it through SHS. How do we make that production a part of a systemic approach? And I think that's the problem is we come out with these big swings, but it's never enough. I think we need a sustainable approach. And I know this council is really focused on that. And I look forward to that conversation. As far as the city goes with the Portland Housing Bureau and the levers we have and can pull, we're pulling them. And that's where the SDC came in. And then we told builders, you get 3 years, that's it. So to provide that $10,000 to $30,000 credit per house, but it's not unlimited. Let's get going now. So we're trying to spur the market. Where does Metro partner in that? I really think you're the convener of that party, the SHS discussion that we're having. I think what's next? And I think that conversation must be part of it to make it ongoing and evergreen, as opposed to these one hits every 10 years. And then the polling's not there to get another focus on housing. We have to start thinking about housing every single year on a cookie cutter thing. We just got to keep going and keep building. And then we draw the population and jobs that we need to our community as well, which that determines the health of our economy. So it's really tied together.
And the home share piece, I think for the 200,000 rooms, the mayor's working closely with PHB on that shelter to housing strike team that he mentioned. One of those aspects is, okay, how do we activate those bedrooms? The ones that can be activated or folks want to activate them for a little extra income. In Atlanta, it's a lot of the older folks, so like a senior population that are taking advantage of those rooms. It's the fastest growing homeless population, so I think there's really something there to connect with Northwest Pilot Project and some different nonprofits who are already serving those individuals. But we're also looking at rooms that are being rented on Airbnb, and are there different regulations that could really help spur activation of those different properties? So I think they're doing a lot of really interesting work there.
Great point. We have a pilot on January 1st. If you have a home and you want to open up a room, we're going to provide $1,000 credit or grant for you. And then if you want to do 2 rooms in the home, there's $500. So if you open 2 rooms in your home, you'll get a $1,500 check from the city of Portland. So we're trying to jumpstart that market and bring in applications and providers to get those homes. So, 100 years ago, home share was ubiquitous. Boarding rooms were part of our country. That's how we built our country up. It's only really recently after, the 60s and the 70s that single homes or detached homes were the reality, right? And now we have to recognize maybe going back to the future has an economic and a humanitarian approach to our community.
So you're saying it's a both end then?
Yeah.
Activating the existing, but we still need that production?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor Rosenthal. Then I'm going to ask for Gonzalez and then back to Councilor Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mayor, for making this presentation. I appreciate both your vision as well as your persistence in the vision, because I know that you're out talking about this everywhere. And there is appreciation, I think, because I'm in a more rural district, smaller cities, that there's a lot of progress being made in Portland, that it's not easy, and it's not, that it's hard won, but that there is progress being made. I think there's a general appreciation. I had 2 questions. One actually gets to the $200,000 beds, or 200,000 beds that are available. I'm assuming you have an identification. Some of them are going to be more available than others. They're going to be in bad locations. They're going to be too far out, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And is that in the county or is that in the city?
It's just city.
Just the city?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're right. Even at 1%, that's 2,000 available opportunities for deeply affordable housing, because those bedrooms would be about $600 to $800. And so it's really, I like Skylar mentioned the elderly. It is the fastest growing population of homelessness, and it really ties in well.
Okay. The other question is, is there any opportunity in the city, as you know, it's getting harder and it's getting harder and it's very costly to build apartment complexes, subsidized apartment complexes. Is there any possibilities for something smaller homes in the city that between, say, Safe Rest Villages, something a step up from Safe Rest Villages that are more independent living, cluster housing or things like that? Or is the built up infrastructure in Portland make that very difficult?
I think all the above, with our residential infill, we've really led the nation other than one or two other cities. So you can build so many different types and apartments and such. 500 square foot is not uncommon anymore. So, and then we're also looking at some, conversions in our downtown properties with some credits we're looking at providing to builders to get a couple of those buildings converted. So, Counselor, I think all of that is on the table, but I do see smaller and smaller type rooms. But I think it's up to us to also talk about, while we're dropped to the SDCs right now, the counselors and I are going to have a robust discussion this next 12 and 24 months. Do we want SDCs on housing that's 1,000 square foot or less? And maybe it's no, because we have to recognize good government doesn't want to tax things that they want. So maybe we need to start reducing, but if you build a 2,000 square foot home or more, maybe that SDC should be higher. And so we're creating, the goal is let's look and put everything on the table and see what do we want to tax and or not tax based on the size of the home we want to provide.
I'll share too. I think, so one thing we're also looking at are current SRO vacancies. So single room occupancy units, there's quite a few in the city right now. So trying to activate those SROs, I think is step one, because that's already there. So how do we activate that stock? But then we've had really interesting conversations and I think everything is on the table. My team member just messaged me yesterday because LA has converted shipping containers into kind of SROs that they're putting as deeply affordable housing. We've talked to folks in mass timber on like, how can we quickly get small rooms up and running? I think that's always something that I think would be really helpful to accelerate that supply. I'll just say, I think the hard part when I dig into the construction is once you get above the first floor. So the density of that with those kind of materials is really tough. That doesn't mean it's not possible, but it starts to get a little more complicated. So we're definitely looking at all those pieces.
Thanks.
Thanks. I'm just going to note that we've got about 5 minutes and we've been going for an hour. So if we could wrap up in the next 10 minutes.
Just a hot topic, President.
I know,
Sorry.
I know. No, I don't want us to squash. I just want us to recognize time. Councilor Gonzalez was next and then Nolan.
Thanks, President Peterson. Mayor Wilson, so good to see you. Thank you for coming. And, one of the things that I'm struck by is thinking about how for the last few years, this region has really struggled to identify for our regional supportive housing system, what is the North Star? What is the top goal that we need to be doing? And I want to jump on the Councilor Lewis bandwagon here and saying that under your administration, you've made very clear what your goal and your priority is, and then you've chased that and pursued that. And in my opinion, I think that work is really, really close to the expectation of everyday voters of wanting to feel like we're taking care of the most vulnerable, feeling safe in our beloved city that is the hub of the region. And I think that one of the very important questions that we're answering that I remember, especially as we were getting SHS off the ground, and like, keep in mind, I mean, this, but for everyone else, I'm a Metro councilor that represents a part of the suburbs, right? And so the suburbs have very strong opinions about what's happening in the city or not, as I'm sure you know. Folks have always asked me, is like, why can't we enforce our, basic public safety or basic sidewalk or these things? And the answer when I first started it in this work was, we can't punish people for not having options available to them. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. So anyway, that was like the long preamble into my question. One of the areas that I did not see in your goals or in the things that you've rolled out, but that I've gotten questions again from my constituents in the burbs is and this is more of a hard one. It's like, what is the role of civil commitment, especially as it comes to folks that we're providing opportunities for care and maybe not linking into that. And so you talked about diversion programs and things like that. I want to hear what you think about the leadership that your team has taken in partnership with counties, with healthcare, with the state, just because I think that is like a third rail policy issue that we do not like to talk about, but I think it's an important one that we need to talk about when we look at the yes and approach.
Yeah.
And then question number 2 is, we were talking about the reunification program. I appreciate you talking about 25% of those people are out of state. When I hear that also, it's 75% of people are from the state or from the region. Don't exactly know how to divide that, but I would imagine from that 75%, many are here. As we continue to move our system towards addressing chronic homelessness and the people that are at the like peak of struggle, have you had success in approaching Washington County, Clackamas County for financial support and reunification to Washington and Clackamas County? Does that question make sense in
It
terms
does.
of the chronic homelessness? Because folks are really concentrated, especially within your city. So I'm wondering, what are those partnerships like? What's that conversation like in terms of maybe it's porting a voucher to a different county or a caseload to a caseload somewhere else?
Yeah.
If you could help me just kind of understand a little bit more of what your work has been like in those 2 areas. And I wanted to go for a little bit more of spicier policy topics, just since we have the opportunity to have you here and see if there's anything we can do to support. Thank you.
Yeah, the regionalism, I think, is at the crux of this because an arbitrary geography drawn line doesn't address homelessness. I had a meeting with President Peterson, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and we started talking about how do we address this on a regional basis? How do we work with the city of Beaverton or Oregon City and such to make sure that we're working on a singular focus? And I keep thinking reunification, it can't just be Portland. It has to be a regional approach because as you go across those lines, we need to discuss. And so we are. So I am, and just had a meeting with Mayor McInerney in Vancouver. How can we support? And we have Jamie with their HSD coming in to talk to our shelter incident command meeting. Jamie is the director of the Vancouver Homeless Services Department. And then we want to bring in the Washington County and the Clackamas. We have to have a shared collaboration and shared resources, and a shared approach, or else you just have people really going through and going through the cracks, if you will. I love that question, and the SHS is a very good table to convene. What metrics are we going to hold each other to? The metrics drive outcomes, and so we have to be more clear with that instead of a larger overall view. This is what we want. Yeah, but how are you going to drive that based on red, green? What are we doing? And then the civil commitment. So civil commitment law, I believe, the change goes into effect on January 1st. Okay. That's where our housing incident command meeting came in to say, okay, what does that look like to us? We're already in front of that, trying to say, let's not wait for January 1st. So we have Judge Nan Waller, who sits in a meeting with us. What does it look like for Portland? Where does that help us? And then so we're looking at that. I don't have an answer for you on that, okay, but I will tell you that we're on a flywheel, and the flywheel has been in reverse, and flywheels are hard to stop once they get momentum going. So our job is to stop it, steady state, get it going forward again. And here's what we've been doing. We work with Unity Behavioral Health Resource Center. When they stabilize a client, and that client happens to be from Orlando, which happened last week, they'll stabilize that client. We'll talk to the mother and we'll help them with a plane ride back to their mom. Anytime you're able to take that $3,000 per day cost, it's $90,000 for 30-day stay in Unity. Highest cost of housing we have. They're partnering with us. Anytime we can start taking that pressure on that resource, the emergency room, the jail, Unity, and start getting that flywheel to go forward, because we have resources in Portland. I'm happy to say that Hooper Detox has available room right now, right here. So we're starting to see that tip of the iceberg reverse. We're starting to see that flywheel start going forward. We have vacancies. If you're ready for addiction or detox right now, I can guarantee you a bed right at this moment. Now, we've not been able to have that. So we're getting there. So while civil commitment's part of the conversation, I want to let everybody know we got to take the pressure off of the system, make sure nobody's living on the street where there is no good outcome.
Yep.
Nobody's getting better living outside. And so we need to stabilize and start helping people through the system. And
Thanks.
long-winded civil commitment answer.
Now, before
Thank you,
we
Mayor.
go through another round, let me just weigh in. I think that the SDCs are completely 100% behind this conversation and waiving them. I think you talked to the mayors of the region though, and they were a little reticent because they want a united front with the state to be able to have the conversation at the state level to get resources back. Because just waiving SDCs means that you're without resources, which
Yes.
in the short run, I think you're willing to give up to meet a need. I would just say we need a better strategy down at the state
Absolutely.
legislative as a region. The acknowledgement that the state has limited our cities and our counties in order to be able to meet this challenge, and not recognize the effects of Measure 5 and 50. And that's how this is playing out, that we have limited ways in which to develop our cities. It's not a lack of leadership. It is a lack of fundamental ability by our cities and counties to be able to develop. I'm glad your city council is having the conversation about how to structure these things differently, but it still behooves our state to play a part in the system. And so I guess my ask is just with the mayor's consortium, with us as a collaborative partner to make sure that we can hit goals that the state is requiring now. We have to be as crystal clear with them of what it's going to take, and the fiscal health of our cities to be able to achieve this is in the toilet. So just a call to action, I guess, in order to meet the need that you have laid out with the 5,000 units. We're not going to get there if the state's not part of that solution.
100% right. We were in a meeting on Saturday talking about the statewide goals as well. Councilor Lewis had that same question. It's great for the city of Portland, but it's not going to work anywhere else. And it won't. In parks, we can't fund operationally any more parks in Portland. We're in a unique situation versus all the cities and towns around the state. We have a built out system of roads and infrastructure. Not many cities have that, like Bend, the fastest growing city infrastructure wise. It won't work. So you're right. It is uniquely capable in Portland, but how do we fund the state? And homelessness is ubiquitous in many of the cities around the state, not just Portland.
Yeah, I mean, just to get to that middle income housing and below, because it really needs to target middle income housing and below, because we're not building enough any type of housing, right? And the fact, I still have a craw in my whatever that I was forced to pay $25,000 for my ADU in SDCs at the city of Lake Oswego. They waive it now. They waive it now, but I am still paying it off, which is the same amount they require for a house on the lake. Just for perspective. Yeah. Okay. We've got Councilor Rosenthal, Nolan, and Lewis, and let's try and wrap it up.
My hand was just left up, sorry.
Okay, Councilor Nolan, Lewis, and let's wrap it up.
Thanks. A couple things. Your 26% number, is that people who were out of the state a year ago, or is it because I wasn't born in Oregon and I suspect it's a pretty short time frame?
Well, it's not.
26% of people from out of state.
It was called homeless upon arrival. Now it's called previously housed location. The question asks, before you became homeless in Portland, where were you previously housed? And so you could have been homeless in Orlando or Brooklyn or previously housed, but you arrived here and you were homeless here. You weren't housed in our community first and then became homeless in our community. Okay. previously housed location. Your last previously housed location is 26% were out of state.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your looking at the short-term rentals. I don't know the numbers, but I suspect that would closing that down or tightening up or just making them follow the rules we
Yep.
got will open up inventory that will affect the market as a
That's
whole.
right.
I also appreciate your waiver of SDCs, although thinking about the either size or price point as the decider on whether you're going to continue that after the 36 months makes sense. We want density, we want mixed neighborhoods, all those kinds of things you could incentivize with the SDC. Aside from the SDC, are you looking at changes to your permitting process, your zoning process, your overlays? I'm a dangerous person because I have one anecdotal experience. I developed a 17-unit apartment building in Portland a few years ago. And I joke, although it was real, that my partners in that wouldn't let me attend meetings with the city because every expectation sent me off the deep end. I don't have to have an elevator if I have 5 stories, but if I have one, it has to be ginormous. The size of the mesh on the screen around the garbage center, they dictated. There's room there.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
help speed up, and time is money, and also take away some of the silly operations requirements. That elevator cost $100,000 more than one that would have served the 17, 20 people who live in that building. So
PTSD right there, clear. So the solution is streamlining our operations. So I'm happy to say Commissioner Carmen Rubio really led a great initiative last year, and she was successful. She moved the 5 bureaus that focused on permitting into one, Portland Permitting Development. And here's the thing, we're dealing with a legacy opinion. Bring a permit to Portland now and you will be impressed and you will be proud. The new DCA, Donnie Oliveira, who's in charge of that, is doing an incredible job at driving systems improvement through that. All I say is, if you built that 17 unit right now, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised and become a promoter of Portland. That's the problem though, is we're not building enough for people to recognize our muscle memory has changed. It's easy or easier to build in Portland. So our job is to make it easy for developers, but we need to bring money, we need to bring developers, we need to bring projects back to Portland to get Portland building again.
thank you. Because I replaced a single family home that was dilapidated. So 17 units on a lot that had 1 unit.
Yeah.
That's what I hope you're encouraging. Last point, I'm intrigued by your program to access some of those unused bedrooms. Have you thought about any kind of roommate matching service?
Yeah. HomeShare has one. There's an app out there called PadSplit. And so they each have different HomeShare is a month-to-month primarily for seniors. PadSplit is week to week. And it's really designed to not have to have the first month's or last month's rent. So you don't need the $4,000 with furniture to move into an apartment. They're oftentimes furnished by owner and it's week to week. So it bypasses Airbnb and you have to have a 3-month lease to move forward. So it's not an Airbnb type approach. And so, yeah, we're setting up our system to be anybody who has a good app, come to Portland and we want to help you. And I'm glad you brought up the Airbnb or the night to night. We did analysis. We have 800 to 3,000 units online that are not properly permitted. And we're going forward. We're actively, that's our housing incident command meeting. We've isolated it. We want that you must come into compliance or we're going to address it. And we're aggressively going after that.
And I would, for roommate matching too, I think really interesting. LA is doing a really good job just because of their high cost of rent. Some of their new affordable housing doing a roommate matching system. One thing that you desperately need to have in place is a resolution kind of mechanism for dispute resolution between roommates, basically. But if you have that in place, they've had a lot of success with it.
Fabulous. Thanks.
All right, last question, Councilor Lewis.
Sure, this is the thread that I was on. Didn't want to open up anything new, but did want to underscore that I have some flags around home share. I think in general, there are ages and stages in life where having roommates is healthy, normal, great for a city. I've had roommates who've gone on to become best friends. I've also lived in roommate situations where I've never spoken with people I've lived with after the day I moved out. Both are normal, both are healthy. However, in this room, we talk a lot about chronic homelessness. And what is not normal is for somebody to exit street homelessness straight into a house with a stranger who is not a social worker. So what I do not want is for home share to become, for $1,500 a month, poor people are becoming social workers. They need real services, not a nice person who's raising their hand who needs some money. So you need to have some real guardrails on the people who it's appropriate to work with them into a home share program. And really make sure that you have support not only for disputes, but for providing services if somebody starts to demonstrate that they need services, and probably an exit plan, because I do not want home share to destabilize people who are stably housed if but for a little bit of money to make rent. So I have a real concern there that we're talking about it in this space where I'm normally thinking chronic homelessness. I know you're thinking far more expansively, but we need some guardrails, and we need to protect the fact that the people who are signing up for this are economically vulnerable or having trouble making their mortgage, and adding personal care of somebody who's coming out of trauma is not how we're going to help them.
Yeah, great. You know, we did a tour in Atlanta and spent 3 days there to work with the mayor's office as well as look at pad split. They have 8,000 units available. 25% of them are for homeless. In other words, 17% are housing people that came from an emergency shelter and 8% came from unsheltered. But 75% of those weren't in the homeless community. They were looking for deeply affordable housing so they wouldn't fall into or the social issues that occur once you do live on the street or addiction and such. So it was really powerful because it looked like, wow, just 25% was for those. A lot of people conflate and think that this is a homelessness strategy. It's really not. It's a deeply affordable strategy for a kiddo who just graduated high school or a elderly who is just wants to stay in the city they built, to be able to stay and live with grace and dignity. So great question. I hear you loud and clear.
Thanks.
Just to round it out, I just want to say thank you not only for your work on this, but I think on behalf of the entire council, thank you for your leadership with the governor when it comes to the threats that we have before us. Thank you to Chief Day for his leadership as well in this space, as well as with, again, the threats that are before us. And let us know how we can be the best partners that we can be. As Metro, we obviously exist in this weird gray space in between everybody. So we don't have a public safety component. We don't have a lot of the issues that you're dealing with. So whatever we can do to help, we are, I think, offer our support, and just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for this table. And I'll finish by just saying it once again. We are deeply grateful for the commitment that you made. You did a stretch goal. You did something that had never been done before. And isn't that how you achieve extraordinary results? So compliment to each and every one of you. Thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to deliver this report and this fantastic information. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Have a great day. Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
All right, counselors, we are move on to our second presentation, which is the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. The CCAP is funded by a federal grant with Metro convening agency partners from throughout the Portland, Vancouver metro area. And the draft plan in our packets today includes actions that reduce climate pollution, save people money, and help achieve other regional goals. We have Ted Leibel and Kim Ellis here to, and Elliot Rose to walk through it with us, and I'll turn it over to Ted.
Great.
Kick us
I'm gonna
off.
quickly turn it over to Kim, our project
Or
manager.
to
Yeah.
Kim, you guys, you know
Thank
what?
you.
Yes, it's like playing pickleball with you guys sometimes.
is.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know who to throw it to.
Well, I'll take the ball. So thank you, President Peterson. We're very excited to be here today. This is our last scheduled work session with council before we come back to you to ask for your endorsement of this comprehensive climate action plan. A couple things I want to say before Elliot gives you an update and shares the information that we have for you today is that while this project has been led by the Planning, Development, and Research Department, Elliot has been working very closely with staff from all across the agency, but also partners across the 7-county metropolitan area to develop this plan. And it builds on all of that existing great work that Metro has been doing and our partners have been doing for quite some time. That the actions, many of which are not new, are broadly supported. So this is the first time that we've had, or this will be the most comprehensive plan for reducing climate pollution that the region has ever had. It's the 7-county area. It's all sectors of greenhouse gas emissions. And so today we are asking for your feedback on the proposed changes that staff have identified in response to your feedback and feedback that we heard during the public comment period. We also have a draft resolution in your packet, and that is the draft of which we would be coming back to you in November to seek your endorsement of this work so that we can then begin working to implement it in future Metro activities that'll be beginning next year, including the update to the regional transportation plan, but also our climate smart strategy, which you all are very well aware of. So with that, I will turn it over to Elliot to give his brief presentation, and then we look forward to hearing your additional feedback today and questions.
Great. Thank you, Kim and Council President Peterson, for the introduction. I'm Elliot Rose, Senior Transportation Planner, and I'm the project manager on the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. Could we get the next slide, please? So, as Kim mentioned, we've been working on this plan for a minute now, since August 2023. And we recently hit a big milestone when we released the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan for public comment as a draft in August. And today I really want to focus on what we heard through that comment period and how we might address it so that we can get your thoughts on how to best finalize this plan. As the timeline shows, we're wrapping up the CCAP soon because we need to submit it to EPA, which provided the grant that funds this work, by the end of 2025. But that is by no means the end of our climate work ahead. And so this is an opportunity as we consider the resolution that Kim mentioned to also look ahead to how the CCAP could continue to guide climate work in the region, beginning with the update to the climate smart strategy and regional transportation plan that are going to kick off next year. Next slide, please. So I've gone through what's in this plan before with you all before back in July when we had an in-depth working session where y'all provided some excellent feedback on the draft plan. Just to remind you, the plan does include an inventory of where climate pollution in this region comes from, projection and targets that illustrate how Metro and our local agency partners can work hand in hand with the states of Oregon and Washington to achieve state climate goals in both those states. And most importantly, a set of recommended actions that really make significant progress toward those goals, as well as other regional goals, particularly equity, saving people money, providing economic development opportunities, and that local and regional agencies can lead. It's important to us to emphasize that this is a framework and guidance to support other climate efforts in the metropolitan area, because a lot of this is new information that's updated for a lot of our partners who also have a really strong role to play in climate action planning. There's an executive summary of the plan as well as the entire plan in your packet. Next slide. So I've talked with council before about how this CCAP is based on the other local climate action plans that are in our region and across the metropolitan area, but I don't think I've showed you what that looks like. And one of our interns, Natalie Moss, who's been doing really excellent work for the planning department, created this map that illustrates all the agency climate action plans that we covered in our plan. It doesn't show the community-based organization plans, and that's not because those aren't important, but because it's harder to map the communities those organizations serve. They don't always have as clear of an organizational boundary. And you know, what I see when I kind of zoom back to this perspective is that most of the metropolitan area, including all of its most populous counties and cities, and really all of the metro region, is covered by at least one climate action plan. And I think, you know, the CCAP tells us that we need to coordinate to really reach our goals. And what the plan's really doing is taking these plans and trying to move us from coverage to coordination, where we don't just have adjacent communities with climate action plans, but we have overlapping plans that all point to the same goals and have complementary roles in working together toward achieving those. Next slide. We don't have to go back, but I did also want to mention that 6 of those plans we showed are currently in the process of being updated, which means there's a real opportunity for Metro and the CCAP to really influence and inform those as they develop. And our partners are excited to see that information. Sorry about that. So we're taking all the potential actions that we considered for this plan from those existing plans I just showed, and we're analyzing them through 3 lenses. Which actions have the greatest benefits and the lowest costs, which best align with community priorities. That's based on some surveys and comments that we've collected, as well as other partner work that went into creating those climate action plans I just summarized, and implementation readiness, which comes to us from a great technical steering group of climate practitioners who have done this work and know about all the devilish details of how to best move it forward. We have a lot of actions that perform well with respect to at least 2 of those 3 and some that hit all 3. And those are the actions that made it into the draft comprehensive climate action plan. Next slide. So we conducted 2 different pieces of outreach during the public comment period. The first was an online open house with a survey attached to it. 180 people took the survey. And I'm showing the top line findings here, and something that really jumped out to me is, you know, I've heard from leadership in this region, including folks at this table, that this is a challenging time to be working on climate. But in spite of that, we still have over 2/3 of the public in this region supporting specifically local and regional government agencies like Metro and our partners taking action on climate. 58% of folks surveyed say that the draft plan is on the right track to addressing climate. And most importantly, you know, there's a lot of different actions in this plan, and we know some of them, like road pricing, can be controversial. But in spite of that controversy, there's majority support of at least 2/3 for every action that we surveyed people on in this plan. We also got into some more details about which actions are most supported in different sectors, but I'm going to keep us moving and can circle back to that if folks are curious. Next slide. So also we accepted public comments by email. Those survey the survey responses I just summarized are anonymous, and we try to catch a lot of folks. Comments are about the details. We received comments from 16 unique organizations or individuals, and there's a lot of really great feedback in these that I encourage you to check out in the comment log that we included in the packet. But there were 3 big themes that really emerged from this and helped us make this plan better through these comments. First of all, better reflecting all the great climate work that's underway by our partners in the region. We know that that's just really important to a plan that coordinates everything. And we got a lot of details filled in through these comments. Second, there's a request for us to really acknowledge the uncertainty over federal climate policy and funding right now in this plan. And so that's something we're really trying to speak to, how that affects the region's work moving forward potentially, while acknowledging that we can't fully resolve it because it's very much a dynamic situation. And lastly, to really better describe opportunities for our community partners to participate in implementing climate actions. So with respect to each comment, many of the comments we received, including the several that were on these themes, staff recommended specific changes to the plans to address this, and those are summarized in the comment log. Next slide. So Kim mentioned the council resolution that staff are planning to bring to you in the November 13th council meeting. That resolution is in its entirety as attachment 3 in your packet. The resolution contains three key action clauses. The first is and the resolution is really designed to acknowledge that the CCAP is a very valuable piece of grant-funded work for the region, but also as a piece of grant-funded work, it has some quirks. It extends beyond Metro's boundary and traditional responsibilities in a way that makes it challenging for Metro to act on it in the way we might for a plan that's really focused on our region and the things that Metro really does on a day-to-day basis. So the three components of the resolution are to endorse the CCAP. That'll demonstrate a commitment by council that'll support the implementation of the plan without risking the appearance of overstepping Metro's authority by acting on behalf of jurisdictions that are outside of the Metro region. There's also an element that directs Metro staff to draw on relevant CCAP analyses and actions in Metro-led climate work. There's many plans that our agency continues to produce that all address climate change because it's really integrated throughout our work. This step acknowledges the value of the CCAP in informing those plans, while also creating flexibility for those different pieces of work to incorporate the most relevant pieces of a really broad plan, and creates council opportunities to provide further direction through the work that you all do to guide those future Metro plans. The last component is to direct Metro staff to pursue resources to implement and update the CCAP, in particular to report on the status of implementing these actions. Our grant funds us for some status reporting, and we've heard from a lot of our partners that it's very useful to keep reporting status, keep convening folks, continue the climate conversation as best as we can, because that's how we make coordination happen. And also the plan finds that we do need more resources to implement the actions in the plan. So this is direction to staff to seek those resources. Next slide. So today we're eager to hear about any comments you have on the draft plan, the changes that we proposed in response to the comments that we heard, or on the draft resolution that I just reviewed. We'll be coming back for you to consider action on endorsing the plan on November 13th, and then the plan is due to EPA by the end of the year. Next slide. So here are the questions that we're interested in discussing with you today. I just do want to highlight that in addition to getting feedback on the draft plan or on the draft resolution, if you need any information to prepare to take action on the CCAP in November, we'd like to hear about that so we can make sure that all of y'all feel prepared for that next meeting. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilors, questions? Councilor Nolan and then Councilor Huang.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
It's okay. I saw one in real and one in virtual. So.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Elliot and team, for all the work. Clearly, a lot of work has gone into it, and a lot of reading of plans from all across the region. I had a question on the 58% of folks that responded that said we were on the right track. I also noticed that 24% strongly disagreed, that they felt that we were on the wrong track. And I was wondering if you had any ideas why a quarter of people strongly disagreed we were on the right track. Is it because we weren't going far enough, or perhaps, we had talked about transportation pricing? Like, can you unpack that strongly disagree?
Sure, yeah. Can I ask council staff to please pull up slide 6, which is the one to which you're referring while we talk it through. So I'm looking, one thing I'm noticing as I'm looking at this slide that folks are working to pull up is that, there's a similar, I want to direct your attention, Councilor Huang, to the chart above where, we ask about Metro and other local and regional governments prioritizing combating climate change. And it's a similar percentage that strongly disagree with that. And so what I suspect is happening there when I look at these responses is there's a strain of people who strongly disagree that climate should be a priority for local government, period. And those folks also disagree that the CCAP is on the right track because it's the government doing that climate work that they disagree with. I'd have to look a little bit deeper into the responses to see if there's anything else going on behind the scene. But the fact that those two percentages are similar makes me that makes it, that's my first guess as to why that's happening. And, you know, when we hear why people disagree, people asked us, we allow people to submit open-ended comments. Some people just kind of say climate's not a priority issue for me, and whatever that is. The biggest concern we do hear from people who are considering these actions as they move forward is concern about cost. And that's why we've made saving money and co-benefit, like impacts around to people's pocketbooks and co-benefits for people saving such a strong part of the CCAP, because that's really consistent with what we've been hearing. People support climate action pretty strongly in our region, but they do acknowledge that it can have impacts on people's costs, and that raises concerns for them.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you, Madam. If we could keep that slide up, just a comment.
Yeah.
And it's to the graphic designers. It looks like strongly disagree on the bottom chart is 1.5 or more as big as the top one. They don't have the same scale.
Got it.
It requires a lot of
Mm-hmm.
processing to understand what that's saying. Were the 180 respondents cross-section of the region, or were they just self-starters?
This was not a statistically representative survey. And if council staff can go to slide 14, I did have something illustrating that. What I will say, while they pull that up though, Councilor Nolan, is that Metro Communications, led by Toby Van Fleet and Craig Beebe, did a statistically significant survey of the region on climate attitudes, and found very similarly to those top line findings that we have from that statistically significant survey. When we look at who's represented, underrepresented or overrepresented in this, we at least have it by county in this. And you see that Multnomah County is overrepresented there in green. Washington, Yamhill, and Clark were the counties that were underrepresented with respect to their share of the population. The other just shows who responded.
And I'm interested in the low participation rate in that survey, and nothing we can do about it at this moment, but speaks to me about the need for giving information to our constituents around the region about maybe there's a short-term cost, but long-term, does that turn around and end up being a cost savings because petroleum-based fuels have skyrocketed in price as either political issues around the globe or resources. So just some education. The other thing I'm interested in, and it may be hidden in your report, and I will admit that I haven't scoured the entire report. If we as a region, we as Metro and we as a region implement all the recommendations in your report, in your plan, where will the region be on the state goal regarding greenhouse gases in 2030? And then the follow-up question is, where will we be if we assume the federal government will provide zero help?
Okay. I'm going to turn us to slide 13, please. Thanks y'all very much for bearing with me as we illustrate these questions. So one back. Thank you.
Okay.
So this wedge, which is showed in July, shows how much the actions in this plan, excluding food, goods, and services, which come from a little bit of a different emissions pot and are not included here. Those are shown, our local and regional actions are shown in dark blue. The state climate policies and programs are shown in pink. If you look at the 2030 line, I don't have an exact number for you, but you can see that together, those dark blue and pink wedges do make up the majority of progress toward the 2030 target, but not all of it. And when we get out to 2050, we have also about a third of the gap is left unfilled. And as we highlight in the report, those emissions come from sources of emissions that are harder to reduce after we reduce gasoline emissions and electricity emissions, which are things that we really have a lot of good substitutes for and know how to approach better. We have these other fuels and sources of emissions that I'm highlighting here that are challenging and persistent. And those are the ones that we're not saying they can't be reduced, but we need a level of collaboration to get at those emissions that goes beyond state or local and regional and really gets all levels of government and even the public and private sector working together.
It's a refresher to my memory to see how big that pink wedge is, which is state policies,
Yeah.
which Metro might influence a little bit, but doesn't really control. Is the scale on this chart?
Metro's not even in here.
I'm sorry?
There's no Metro slice here. I don't see a Metro slice, the actual Metro Authority slice.
Metro slice is too small to see.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That's what I'm struggling with right now is like, where do we fit into this?
Well, that's a great question. It's really talks to the importance that this plan is really about the collaboration with the local governments and the influence. You're right, there's no direct, what does Metro control specifically? It's going to be a very small piece of this, but it's really about our work with the local governments. That is that top, I'll call it purple, dark purple wedge is really the focus of what we can hope to help to accomplish with local agencies in coordination with them.
If I might follow up on that thought, an alternative way of looking at it would be analogous to the state and affordable housing, where the state set statewide affordable housing goals and then told individual cities, and in our case, metro region, what share of that accomplishment each one is responsible for delivering. It requires collaboration, preferably with carrots. But if we're serious about it, we should at least identify sticks that could be used if the carrots fail. I don't want to start out with sticks, but if this is an existential question for the region and the globe. And I think I would be looking for more of this is what needs to happen. We think this can come from the state, this can come from cities, this might even actually come directly from Metro to see how we get there. And I'd like to see some kind of scale that shows the state goal of a 90% reduction. Is the zero the state goal at 2050? Okay. Okay.
Can I move on?
I want us to
Other-
be more active in this. Providing technical information, but also providing a little bit of political leadership to get our local partners to step up. How they get there, we don't need to determine, but that they should get there, I think is within our parameters, within our realm.
Okay, we've got other counselors. Counselor Lewis Rosenthal.
Sure, thank you so much. Really think this is good work. And in particular, the ability to continue to have focus on this, even though this was part of federal grant that we thought was going to have future phases. And now we're using it to kind of forecast what we need to self-organize around. Appreciate that. Want to really thank you for including the summary of email comments received. I do think that's a really telling document to see side by side with the kind of general broad open house and temperature check that you did around general alignment. To really dive in, I found it interesting that Southwest Washington had so many points and that we were able to incorporate a lot of them. I just want to highlight that Clackamas County was silent. It looks like in the comment, even while we had City of Portland, Multnomah County, Washington County weighing in. And some of that might be because Clackamas County doesn't have an adopted climate action plan. So just wanted to say that out loud. That's a complicating factor. A lot of folks who live in my district live in unincorporated Clackamas County, which means they live in this region. And if and when this is adopted, this is going to be their only climate action plan because they don't have a local jurisdiction that's adopted one, which is different than the majority of the folks in this region.
Dang.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Dang. Then I also just really resonated with the tension of this moment. I think just a citizen advocate emailed saying, look, you're putting a lot on the future of telecommuting, but we're also seeing telecommuting really hurting our downtown economy. Don't count on it in the same way. Don't lean into that. So I just want to lift that up, that we got to solve for multiple problems at once. And that's something that the climate movement has tried to do through creating green jobs. You're solving for a future economy at a global scale, but what we really need to do is solve for that future economy at the local scale. To the extent that Portland's really built a reputation of being good on green tech, and we were innovators in some ways, but let's put our own mask on first on this one, and not forget that our local investment in keeping the city alive and vibrant is as important as 1 percentage point difference, because we're not getting people on a bus, or we're not getting people into downtown. It's a hard moment to have enthusiasm, but I do appreciate that there were people who participated in this process with enthusiasm and optimism. Thanks.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Madam Chair. First of all, I want to appreciate the hard work that's gone into this and a lot of the information that's come forward and the involvement and engagement. But I have to say the overall, and I understand the limitations on this kind of report and how it was funded and those conditions. That said, this report does not make me happy because it does not point much of a way forward. So I have 3 questions which might be taken as somewhat critical. But I hope in the spirit of constructiveness. First of all, in the executive summary, it's mentioned there are 5 transportation, 8 housing, and I don't know however many food processing recommendations, and yet they're not listed. And there is no explanation as to what those 3 bullets represent. They're just sort of like they seem to be general. I would think they could be more specific, or you could at least list the recommendations. The first question is, why is that structure not include the specific points? Secondly, why does the resolution not include, or the report itself does not include, a recommendation of the highest priority items, the items that give the biggest bang for the buck and that are the most easily accessible, rather than just adopt a whole set of potential actions? It would seem appropriate for us to adopt a resolution. And then secondly, why, and there may be a legal reason for this, why do we include any statement that says we will not commit to anything? That sounds like a statement saying we don't want to do anything. So those are my 3 questions.
Why don't you guys start on? Yeah. Weigh in.
Great. I'm going to take the question about the executive summary first, because I think, we have 24 actions in the report. and we have a 4-page executive summary. And that's a simple question of space where we tried to categorize and describe those actions without listing them all. But I'm hearing feedback that we need to try to find a way to list all those actions in the executive summary.
Because I would, very few people are going to read the entire report. They will read the executive summary.
Why don't I take a crack at the prioritization?
Yes.
I think one is the report does identify the actions that when you looked at the criteria, the 3 criteria of what would make the recommended actions in itself is a prioritization, that those are the top actions that we could take, considering one of the factors was considering best bang for the buck, which is which is part of your question. The rest is that this is supposed to, the purpose of this report really is focusing more on what can we do to help the other planning and prioritization climate plans in the region. Again, it's a foundation of knowledge more and getting us to coordinate and work together on the same things, as opposed to setting a specific, like, this is the top priority, this is the second priority. Each of these climate plans and strategies that we're working with, even outside of our region, need to do that for themselves. And when we, but get us all on the same page about which ones are the most effective, but within the context of those individual plans and strategies that are being developed. And for example, when we update the regional transportation plan and our climate smart strategy over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, that's Metro specific, and Metro then as an agency will be able to prioritize the actions within those that are the most important, that Metro wants to work on in a priority order. And so that's really more the purpose of this plan, is to set the context for those other action plans in the region.
I'm not in full agreement with that. I think we have an opportunity here to set what we think. And bear in mind, staff, you have the biggest, you've done a detailed evaluation, which is very good. What's available, what can be done, how effective it can be, who can implement it. You've gone through the analysis, and we have not gone through that individually, I don't think. I think it would be a good thing to sort of lay it down, say, here's what we think are the best things. And I think that would condition and also help educate the various jurisdictions that have their own climate action plans. They may agree, they may not, but so I understand your argument, but I think we could move the ball forward quicker on that.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks. I'm gonna do something different today. And I'm usually like abundantly optimistic and like happy-go-lucky. And want to just share some thoughts on this. You know, when I look at this chart, and I'm happy this chart is still up there, is the bulk of that pink, to me, I'm assuming is unfunded by the state, right? And a lot of the work that the state has decreed by program is not funded as well. I mean, climate smart policy, which I feel like Metro is held to the standards of this policy, and we receive no money to implement it, is hard. And so I think I'm feeling that. And at the end of the day, all policy is about trade-offs, right? And like, we're trying to manage all the different things that our people and our constituents care about. And trade-offs in shaping markets and shaping emissions is like, when this program was created under a federal government that gave a shit. Sorry, it's not your guys' fault. And our state that had more resources and was more robust in being able to do that. I mean, that is so much, approaching that work from that lens is, to me, is like, it builds momentum on alignment. And right now, I feel like we're really losing our grip on our region's ability. I mean, our state is like a bit over 4 million people, right? And I think that we already have some of the most pro-climate policies in place in the state, water management, land use, I mean, et cetera, right? So I think forest preservation, like the work that we do to that. And so I'm thinking like, especially as our state is looking down a barrel of like of a recession, I'm really thinking about trade-offs. And I do think that as we look at these opportunities for our region, like I want to make sure that we're not creating more harm to communities that are already at a severe deficit, you know, like, and so I'm hoping that as we move forward on our collective actions, because there's a lot of actions that we can take, but we do not have the resources to do many of them, right? Is that we can focus on the strategies that help us create economic opportunity. And that is sectors, jobs around clean energy and things like that. I just worry about the like pursuing for the sake of the goal without understanding too that as a region and as a state, we're competing with other states as well. And I think we do a lot for the climate as a state, and there's more that we can do. And Metro has such an important leadership role. And sorry for being like more pessimistic today than usual. I'm just really feeling the weight of the federal government and how they've completely stepped back from serving people. And so I'm kind of coming back to this question of like, we're going to pass this plan. What can we be held to and measure versus say, these are in an ideal world, these are strategies that we can move forward. Anyway, I'm just sharing that. I know it's a bit different from what I've shared on this kind of school of thought on this work, but I think that the time that we're in is really going to force us to be like, there's going to be an emergency on every front. And like, how do we help prioritize and get more focused and more focused? So that's what I'm trying to do in terms of that through the prism of the lens for our specific 3-county region. I know this is broader. Yeah, thank you. That was a lot.
Thank you.
Well, I think, Councilor Gonzalez, you led with a question about like what's in this pink wedge. And I also, Councilor Nolan raised that and I didn't get to respond when you did. So I'm going to just start there. This pink wedge is policy requirements that the state has, and really three policy requirements: deliver cleaner energy to the grid, sell lower carbon fuels in Portland or in Oregon, and sell cleaner cars in Oregon. Mm-hmm. And those are the big things. So those things are done with policies and through the state's regulatory powers. And the state's a big enough of a market that the state, can hopefully do those things and works to do those things in a way that doesn't impose additional costs on Oregonians. The first two polls that I mentioned, clean energy and clean fuels, are moving ahead with no threats from the current, no current threats from the federal administration. It was the One Big Beautiful Bill's made a change to the authority to adopt those clean fuel standards. And we're working with state staff to figure out the implication of what that is. You touched on economic growth as well. I think something that's really interesting about the workforce planning analysis that we're working with Echo Northwest to get into the final plan is that climate jobs in our region are a lot more widespread than we think they are and a lot less specialized than we think they are. The two big job shortages that I hear most about affecting our ability to move forward on climate: contractors, general contractors, people who build stuff, and people who drive transit. And so one kind of silver lining that me and the team take from that a little bit is that climate jobs are widespread throughout our economy in the region. And those are careers that provide opportunities for advancement for a lot of people. And that's a different perspective on like how we've looked at this in the past. We're like, oh, it's like these solar technicians. Those jobs are important too, but they're specialized and they provide opportunities for fewer people. We think we have opportunities to serve and advance a much greater portion of the workforce by broadening how we look at what a climate job is.
Yeah, I hear the point on transit and bus drivers, but our state legislature able to fully fund them, right? And so, I mean, I'm hearing you, but at the same time, I feel concerned about our ability to follow through on the state level action. And I know that we play a big leadership role in that. I think Councilor Nolan touched on that in their points earlier, but anyway, thank you. Good point.
If I could add just really quick, I think Councilor Gonzalez is on, and you brought it up clearly, Elliot. I mean, all of these technologies, clean tech, whatever, they all are electric based, right? And we have to be very much concerned about, like, if we want to progress these technologies, then what does the pipelines look like around training individuals and folks around this? I think that plays a key part in this conversation is around economic and workforce development, particularly creating a workforce that can maintain and operate a new technologically cleaner system that we have here in Portland.
So I think what I'm hearing is from the council, this is a good beginning of a conversation. But what is Metro's role going forward and how do we prioritize is the next key conversation. And we always sit here in a, what is within our authority, what is within our collaboration, blah, blah, blah. I had a conversation with a woman who has worked with high tech, directly with Bezos, directly with the most high tech people looking at sustainability for the future because of data centers. And the new thinking is not on trying to meet a parts per million goal. The new thinking is how to sequester, how to not have the wildfire, because these are the biggest generators of emissions that we can possibly have, and how to prevent these other things. So I guess my whole mindset on this kind of expanded just over the weekend, and I'm feeling like we need to get as clear as the mayor is about his homelessness and be very specific. And to me, Metro has really put its foot forward on these cooling corridors. And I would really like to see a staff recommendation after this that really hits hard on a narrow thing that we can actually get done and show specificity. We know how to do corridors. We know how to do some of these things that it's a packaged deal of everything that you're talking about. But what would it take to actually implement the cooling corridors? What would it actually take to do that? Because the technology is coming forward. It may not be at the pace under this administration that we all wish, but it's happening. The jobs are there. Like, we can promote these things in a way if we're clear about what we're trying to achieve and people see the results on the ground. And I'm not sure that I am totally bought into a parts per million at all anymore. So if we can, I'm going to get more information on this, but I think it's about preventing bad things from happening that push us over the edge on emissions, but it's also about doing the proactive. And I don't know of a better way for us to be more proactive and more clear and more targeted right now than something that we've already put time and energy into, something that clearly has benefits to people and place and emissions. So I would love to see a next step because it's reading through it. It's a great plan, but I'm not feeling comfortable with how we participate and how we direct. And certainly am not ready for another conversation about pricing right now. Clearly has benefits, but like the political viability versus the practicality of the cooling corridors. Like, when I weigh these things, tolling is not under our authority. It's not politically viable right now, but what is? So how do we narrow that down very quickly and start adding in the incentives where we can to move that along?
Thank you, President Peterson. I think those are very insightful and helpful comments. We are working with Marisa on some of the next steps for the cooling corridors to bring back to council. I think this work complements that and is still important because it is about doing as much as we can to prevent the harm that we know is happening because of climate change. And while we may not be meeting the goals, the actions in the plan are getting us a long way there, but there's a lot of barriers and obstacles for us to get over, to, whether it's financial, relationships, federal policy. I mean, there's a whole, as you all have said, but it is important, I feel, as a climate program manager, that we are working on mitigation and adaptation. And I think that the upcoming updates to the regional transportation plan and climate smart strategy is an opportunity for us to bring these two pieces together. One thing that this work started before cooling corridors, we were very appreciative of the opportunity to do that cooling corridors work and learned a whole lot. And it is very practical. It's resonating with everybody. What people are really wanting to, what can I do next? And so we want to make that information available too. And I think there's work for us to do as an agency and program to further communicate in ways, better communicate in ways that are linking them, but showing practical solutions, but also, not giving up on trying to reduce what's happening to our region, our planet, because of climate change. We can't give up.
I'm just going to repeat that the Willamette Valley farmers are looking to the Sacramento Valley farmers for help in figuring out what crops and how to use less water. Right. So we're definitely there. And I don't want to chase a parts per million when we're already experiencing. I want to be able to, and we are also ahead of the curve as a state on renewable energy. So it's like, what is it that's practical for us at this point, and what is it practical for the people, rather than policies that right now for us get us just, 0.5%, rather than actually allowing somebody to walk to the bus stop and not fry in the meantime, right? Evidently, Phoenix is now working on cooling corridors. They are going to reforest Phoenix. That is the mayor's new initiative. And I'm like, it's about time. And how are you going to do that, right?
It's gonna take time for those trees.
It's going to take time. It's going to take water. Like, where does all this come from? So there are places that are already thinking ahead of us, and I would like to make sure that we're using that practicality as well.
Yep, thank you.
Because I think it's hard for this council to sit here and say, well, we'll just collaborate and depend on every other city to do their part, when in a whole, 25% of them will have a mayor at that moment that says, yes, this is a priority, and the rest won't. It's just really hard to sit there and not have something to work on. Yeah. Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, if I might, thank you, Madam President. I just want to add a comment, sort of perspective I got from a couple of the sessions that we've had recently. It's one thing to ask us to say, yeah, we endorse this as a nice report. It has a lot of good data and encourages us to coordinate with everybody. Great. We already do that. I think one of the things I got from our sessions was we want to bring the harder questions in front of council. Give us a list of your top 5 priorities. We'll debate them. Maybe cooling corridors will rise to the top. Maybe composting will. I don't know. But bring us what you think are the best things that we should be working on and have us debate them. I think that's something that I think we would like to be challenged more. That's my view. I'm not saying I've shared that with the rest of the council, but that's my view.
Councilor Lewis, did you have something there?
No, you don't want to hear from me.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So
So
the
next
next steps are,
Yes, we'll come back to you on November 13th. We'll be seeking council's endorsement of the resolution and CCAP. I didn't hear any changes to the resolution. This was an opportunity to,
Yes, get rid of number 2.
which was,
which is,
That's my recommendation.
so the number 2 action in the resolution is as Councilor Rosenthal said, it is a legalistic statement that says this
Legally
action
required?
does not commit Metro partners to implementing any of the climate actions contained within the comprehensive climate action plan. Further resolves direct staff to use this information. So you are directing Metro staff to, take action and build on this work in our future work. But because of the nature of the 7-county metropolitan area that this climate action plan covers, that is a reason for that second statement.
I just need a show of head nods whether the council wants to remove 2 or just leave it in.
If you want to do that,
Does the council care about number 2?
get rid of it. I'm tired of us saying we're going to have a plan that doesn't achieve anything, that we're not committed to.
My opinion.
I think for me, I'd like for us to have a more defined, clear role. It feels very much like we are just like in the mix of things and approving something that like we don't have any control around. I'd like to have some clarity around what is our role in all of this and how we can utilize our.
And would you agree that's kind of a next step because this plan had a purpose, the purpose was more general, but we want more specificity, so it's kind of the next step. So I guess I'd like to see that in the resolution of what, of a commitment to come back and work with council on next steps. It's just for Metro, not for the region.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Maybe it's similar to what I am about to say. I would encourage our team here not to leave this meeting thinking that the council said, yeah, bring it back and we'll vote yes. I would encourage that that you've taken notes. There have been great suggestions here, that we have an opportunity to do briefings before you come back to council, and that there should be some substantive changes in the report and the action plan before we vote on it.
No, I think what I'm suggesting, Councilor, is that the purpose of this plan through the federal grant was very specific and general and broad. And what we're asking is for the next step to be more specific. What is Metro's role? What could we do? How do we prioritize that? So,
How can it be
Councilor Gonzalez?
specific and general?
Well, to me, this document was a requirement by the EPA if we wanted to apply for federal funding to advance any of these strategies. We needed to talk to our regional area as defined by the EPA, which we did. We needed to document these are the strategies that we are generally interested in pursuing. And then 3, we would need to then apply to the EPA for funding to do these. This is what that is. This is what this plan is. And in the way that I'm viewing it, kind of programmatically within Metro. And like the reason that I'm being such a pessimist is that I don't think this grant program is going to exist, right? So it was good work that we did in this administration. I doubt that we'll receive a grant from this, maybe in a future administration if we are so fortunate. But that's kind of why I'm comfortable with us not saying this is Metro's implementation action plan. This is a requirement of a grant for us to qualify for more grant funding.
That's my point.
So I understand the kind of like, this is not clear enough. And I think it's designed to not be clear enough because this also involves 6 other counties that are not within Metro. And we'll be clear when we apply for grants that we want to go for, that the council identifies are our top priorities. So yeah, I guess I hear the like general versus specific concern, but the federal government asked us to be kind of general about it. So anyway. Staff, please feel free to correct me where I'm incorrect.
No, you are exactly correct. That is what the purpose of this is. And in terms of the future steps, there will be information that we will work with Marisa on the cooling corridors and next steps for Metro on that. The regional transportation plan update and climate smart strategy is a place that we get to update Metro's implementation plans of climate and other outcomes that we're trying to achieve with investments in our system and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And those are places where the council will be shaping how we're doing that work, how we're prioritizing that work. You're frowning, Councilor.
No, I'm just, yes, and,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that we're making it. That's the linear approach to what we've done and we've done in the past. And I think what we're saying is there's another parallel line. And that parallel line is what Metro wants to do. There's probably a JPAC conversation about what the region wants to prioritize and how they want to do it through whatever, right? All the different funding metrics. But as Metro, what are we trying to achieve? And how do we go about getting agreement region-wide? It may require some JPAC conversation, but how do we initiate an actual program that's a priority, that's not just through these other rote kind of,
Okay, I hear you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think it's yes and.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Councilor Lewis.
Yes, I guess I'm fine with and supportive of removing number 2 at the top of page 3 from the resolution. That is fine with me. I will support it either way, though. I understand the exercise we went through. I think this is great documentation of the exercise we went through. I think that it is a map forward that is both unfunded, but also doesn't meet the moment we're in. One of the tools in order to meet the 33% of hopefully people will take some action is that we're going to switch people's dietary habits to less carbon intense food. That is really hard to sit with while recognizing that nearly 1 out of 5 Oregonians are losing their food stamps in a week.
Mm-hmm.
I can't right now talk about how we're going to hopefully meet a goal by less carbon intense food when what's in my heart is that this agency has no food program. Maybe we don't have a role there, maybe we do, but that's a conversation that our constituents probably want us to be having. I'll vote for this, but let's talk about food. Let's talk about the fact that people are going to not pay their rent because they're buying food, and then it is our problem. Thank you for your work, but it's not the tool of this moment. Let's get this done. Let's move on with what people think we're working on.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. And what I was trying to do by just mentioning the cooling corridors is it's probably going to come up during the retreat as one of the priorities. So like, how do we use the priority that we already want to work on to help show success and be narrow? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, President Peterson, just because I think we're having a good discussion, right? And I think this is what we've talked about, that we want to have more discussion rather than statements. Yes, and I mean, I feel like a lot of our plans have a very strong climate. So you're talking about JPAC. So I feel like as one of the JPAC counselors, I could talk about this through our RTP and the like major climate that we're projecting in that. But the RTP is informed by projects and programs, right? So if certain things fall through, the RTP is like going to very much miss the mark. The RTP that we all adopted as a Metro Council assumes pricing. If we do not do pricing, we are significantly missing our climate goals. And so, I mean, I think as we start to look at like the economy of where we are, what the appetite is, I mean, we tried to implement a toll in the region, was very challenging because of multiple reasons of the way that our built environment is, disparities. And so I think like, this is where the rubber is meeting the road, right? Like as council, we're saying staff, go do this. And then I think what Councilor Lewis and President Peterson and Councilor Nolan and everyone else is saying is like, but the community's over here too. And like, how do we help connect that in terms of the top priorities that people have? But I do think that like, I hear that we all want to have action on climate. And that requires very, very major structural changes, right? To our behaviors as individuals, as neighborhoods, as communities. And are those communities with us or not? Because I think sometimes the hardest thing that people have with regards to policy is like, are you making me do this because it's you think it's good for me, right? Or is it good for me? So I think it's like that determination of bottom up to top down, and that is more of like a social project of like and leadership that involves us, in my opinion, because it's trade-offs. I yeah, that's what my constituents talk to me about. So
Agreed. Just going back to what the number one request was to ODOT when it was under ODOT control on 82nd was trees. It was the one thing ODOT said they would not do
Let me just cut a bunch out her.
because they were
Oh.
probably too hard to maintain. Okay,
Hmm.
so I think we've got a general, we'll go forward, we'll take out number 2 in terms of put what comes before us, add in a metro specific bullet, a follow-up, and then we will follow up.
Yes, thank
Sounds
you.
good. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And great
Does that help?
presentation and feedback. Yes, and
Okay.
direction. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, thank you. Again, good work. Don't want to let you go without saying good work. And a lot of it. All right, we'll move on to Chief Operating Officer Communication.
Thank you. My computer died, so I'm not on the screen. I think, that was a great example of how changing circumstances are forcing the organization to have to pivot, that avenues that we thought were open are now closed, and we need to kind of regroup and say, okay, what is within our control? So thank you, Council, for that conversation. The only thing that I'll say for my update is that we have a Metro Mixer tonight at the City of West Lynn and City Hall. Thank you.
Historic City Hall.
Historic City Hall.
Different than current City Hall.
Historic City Hall of West Lynn. So look forward to being there in community with our other local governments, and look forward to seeing some of you there as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilor Communication. I just want to, before we go, I just want to bring up a quick update, and Councilor Lewis and Wong can weigh in. There was a Bike Portland article on Friday on 82nd Avenue, and we checked in with TriMet because the article was about a staff recommendation that none of our council had heard about yet for how to move forward on the 82nd Avenue. And there's a November 7th Policy and Budget Committee meeting, which Councilor Lewis and Councilor Wong serve on. And because of that conversation, TriMet is coming forward with a different staff recommendation and not asking for an endorsement or approval of the staff recommendation on November 7th, but a start of a conversation rather than the end of a conversation. So there's two things in that. One, I think Councilor Wong would like to have a either work session or public hearing, depending what we can fit in, but still provide, if we have a work session, maybe some invited testimony in the next couple of weeks, so that the council can hear the staff recommendation and give the councilors who serve on 82nd, information about how to represent our views on that. So we're going to try and move as quickly as we can to get that done. And knowing that there's a further out decision now that I don't know the date for, to get to an actual proposal decision on 82nd Avenue project. Would you like to add anything, Councilor Lewis or on that? I just wanted to give you guys an update that we're going to have this come before us so that we can have a public conversation about it.
I think that feels like a good summary of where things are. I just want to really underscore that the staff proposal from TriMet we learned about as counselors through media. And our staff also seemed caught off guard, and there's some stuff to work on there. And I appreciate your leadership calling that to light directly, but I think it's important for us to share more globally.
Yep.
An additional complication is that I will be out of town on the 7th with my mother. I'm happy to call in if it's absolutely
No.
needed, but we are going to be seeking to have you in my space.
Yeah.
I don't miss meetings often. This feels like a moment where I need to be with my mom.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
So with your permission, council, I will just serve in Councilor Lewis's place for that one meeting and make sure that not only your comments get reflected, but the entire council. Anything to add?
No, thank you for stepping in last week and on the 7th. We appreciate your leadership.
Thanks. All right, Councilor.
I have a quick question on 82nd, and I see Kelly is here, just, they might be able to help me. But in similar to the TV highway project, Metro managed the like LP up to the LPA process, right? And then the project was transferred to TriMet for primary stewardship. Was that this year? Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. I just wanted to understand. I'm seeing a nodding head from Kelly Betteridge over here. So, okay, thank you.
Councilor Rosenthal, did you have a
Yeah.
question?
Just one, a nice event. SEPA Home Forward had a gala. One of the nice things about us, they're working on, and it's funded with both transportation-oriented development funding as well as our Metro Bond. I think it's about 80-unit complex that's going to be just south of the Beaverton Library, an excellent location right across the park and close to access for libraries. And that's another nice project that's going on in Beaverton.
Awesome, thank you. Councilor Simpson?
Thank you, President Peterson. A couple quick updates. Last Friday, we had a roundtable in East County with Congresswoman Dexter, Rep. Ruiz, Rep. Valderrama, Rep. Hudson, to talk about the ICE actions that have ramped up, particularly in District 1, and to talk about the possible National Guard deployment here in our region. More to come from that space. It's unfortunate we're here, but we're here. The next piece is this morning, Councilor Wong and I got an opportunity to sit with the Central Eastside Industrial Council and talk a little bit about what's happening on our corridor right in front of us. And you know, some good questions came up. We still got some more work to do with Multnomah County on how we address homelessness. I mean, obviously, we had a big presentation on that this morning. Had a similar tour down on Sandy with the Historic Park Rose to talk with the Business Roundtable with folks. And I just want to name for the record that the impacts that businesses are feeling in the core and the Central East Side are not lost or they don't happen out east. They actually happen more frequently without any support from our local law enforcement coming out to show up and provide support when folks are in crisis. I know that we have a lot of work to do, but I just want to uplift that if we're going to talk about business, we need to talk about business as a whole, not just the ones that are downtown. And then finally, on a brighter note, today is Tiny Trunk Tuesday. If you're not a member of the Oregon Zoo, you should go and be a member, but also join the social medias and watch Tula 2 smash her first gourd of the fall. That is all I got.
Hell yeah.
Tiny trunk.
Much brighter note. Thank you.
All right. Councilor Lewis and Gonzalez?
Yes, thank you, colleagues. It was so fun last Wednesday, the 15th. I got to be there with a golden shovel in Lake Oswego, Oregon, as we broke ground on affordable housing. You heard that right, folks? Lake Oswego is gonna have regulated affordable housing
Come on, Lake O.
at El Nido. And that is in huge thanks to the Housing Authority of Clackamas County using our bond dollars and Hacienda for taking on the insurmountable task of getting to the point where we're breaking ground. Colleagues, you may remember this site because it is one of the first ones that we had to use our site acquisition dollars. So Metro played a really pivotal role in identifying this as a great spot for affordable housing.
Yeah. Yes. Happy Halloween.
Yes. That's how enthusiastic we are about affordable housing
Let
in Lake
go.
Oswego. They're doing that work. And it's right across the street from Habitat for Humanity. So the connectivity there between folks who are living, potentially wanting to buy their first home, being able to look across the street and envision that as an opportunity. It's a
There's
big
also
deal.
just up the street, a low-income affordable housing for seniors. That was put in like 10 years ago.
But it's not regulated affordable housing. Yeah, yes.
But it was the first one.
And then the other thing I wanted to share is that Clackamas County celebrated the Sunrise Community Vision Plan Thursday night, and wanted to thank all the colleagues, particularly JPAC folks, who have helped steward Sunrise as a planning process for the past 2 and change years. It's obviously a project that's been talked about for 4 decades. But we've only really gotten our arms around what the community needs are in the past few years, thanks to Metro's leadership, I think, and really saying there is a purpose and need here of a project and a corridor, but it has to be a complete community vision and not just a highway to a future that may not be the future. So really proud of the work that Clackamas County did. It's like literally the gold standard of community engagement. There is now a corridor coalition that is funded, and I look forward to great things to happen there. If you want a tote bag or a coffee mug, talk to me later. And lastly, Oregon City Community Enhancement Grant Committee met last night, not to give out any more money because we spent our money in 2 rounds already for this year. Not outside of the IGA, keeping the box of what the IGA says, but we've reshaped how we expect future rounds of that program to be spent. We went over our evaluation tools. We went over the goals, because in addition to Metro's goals, Oregon City had added 3 additional goals. We're not keeping all of those. We've reset the maximum grant award and some other things like that. So happy to talk offline to those of you who have community enhancement grants that might need a refresh. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. Last week, the Forest Grove Community Enhancement Program committee met. We awarded $80,000 worth of grants to local community organizations, so that was pretty sweet. And last Thursday, I had the opportunity to go on a tour with some of the council to Oxbow, and got to spend some time with the parks team there, learning about the way the Sandy River is really impacting the banks. And just rivers are insane. Obviously we know that. So appreciate all the hydrologists, geologists, scientists that are being incredible stewards of the resources of folks. And then also last week, the Street Trust had their Alice Awards. Multiple people got much deserved recognition, including Representative Susan McLean, who's been working on the transportation package and recommitted to that package in 2027. So we're looking forward to work with her, and congratulations to her.
Thanks.
Representative Mark Gamba also received an award, I should say.
There you go. Congrats. Okay. With that, seeing no other hands raised, we are adjourned, and our next regularly scheduled meeting is October 23rd at 12 p.m.